When I walked into my own kitchen and saw my daughter-in-law feeding my husband breakfast in my bathrobe, I knew my life was about to shatter. But what I discovered 3 hours later made that moment look like a mercy. I was sliding a casserole into the oven when I heard Richard's car in the driveway. Earlier than expected, I wiped my hands on my app. My name is Margaret Holloway, and for 43 years, I believed I had built something unshakable, a family, a legacy, a fortress of love that could withstand anything life threw at us. I was wrong. The morning it all began to unravel started like any other Tuesday in our Connecticut suburb. I woke at 6, prepared coffee for Richard, my husband of 43 years, and laid out his newspaper exactly how he liked it, folded to the business section. Our home was a sprawling colonial that Richard's real estate empire had bought us 30 years ago, back when the kids were small and our biggest worry was whether Tommy would make the varsity basketball team. I was 65 years old, a retired high school English teacher with silver hair. I'd finally stopped dying, laugh lines I'd earned from 4 decades of family dinners, and a heart that still beat strongest when my children walked through the door. We had 3 children. Tommy was 41, our eldest, a cardiac surgeon married to a woman named Vivian who smiled with her mouth but never her eyes. Our daughter Carolyn was 38, a corporate lawyer in Manhattan, who visited once a month with her husband James and their 2 teenage daughters. And then there was Marcus, our baby at 35, a software entrepreneur who'd just gotten engaged to a stunning woman named Sophia, 20 years his junior. That Tuesday morning, I hummed while arranging fresh flowers in the foyer. Richard was due back from his morning golf game, and Tommy had texted that he and Vivian would stop by for lunch. Caroline was coming to a rare midweek visit that filled me with unexpected joy. On and walked toward the front door, ready to greet him with the kiss I'd given him every day for 4 decades. But he wasn't alone. Through the frosted glass of our entrance, I saw 2 figures, Richard's tall, still athletic frame, and beside him, the unmistakable silhouette of a woman in a dress far too elegant for a golf course. My hand froze on the doorknob. They were laughing, that intimate kind of laughter that comes from shared secrets, not shared jokes. I opened the door slowly, and the laughter died instantly. "Margaret," Richard said, and I heard something in his voice I'd never heard before. Guilt. "We weren't expecting you to be downstairs." The woman beside him was Sophia, Marcus's fiancée. Sophia, who was supposed to be in Boston for a work conference. Sophia, who was wearing a cream silk dress that must have cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Sophia, whose hand was resting on Richard's arm with a familiarity that made my stomach turn. I live here," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why wouldn't I be downstairs?" Sophia's perfectly painted lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Margaret, Richard was just giving me a tour of the garden. Marcus always talks about how beautiful your roses are. But Marcus didn't talk about my roses. Marcus barely noticed them. And our garden tour didn't require Sophia's hand on my husband's arm, or that dress, or the way Richard's collar was slightly askew, as if someone had adjusted it. "Where's Marcus?" I asked. "Boston," Sophia said smoothly. "I finished my conference early and thought I'd surprise him by coming back to visit his family. Richard was kind enough to pick me up from the station." A perfectly reasonable explanation. So why did my hands start trembling? "I'll make tea," I said, turning toward the kitchen before either could respond. In the safety of my kitchen, my domain, my sanctuary, I gripped the counter and tried to breathe. I was being paranoid. Sophia was family, soon to be family. Richard was just being welcoming to our future daughter-in-law, but I'd been a teacher for 30 years. I knew how to read people, and everything in Sophia's body language, in Richard's evasive eyes, screamed that something was desperately wrong. I heard them in the foyer, their voices low and urgent. I couldn't make out words, but the tone was unmistakable. They were arguing about something, about me. Then silence. Then footsteps. Sophia appeared in the kitchen doorway, her smile back in place like a mask she'd temporarily removed. "Margaret, you're so sweet. But I should really go. I'll surprise Marcus at home instead." "I thought you wanted tea." Rain check. She air-kissed both my cheeks, enveloping me in expensive perfume that seemed wrong in my homey kitchen. "You're the best mother-in-law to be a girl could ask for." She was gone before I could respond, leaving me standing in my kitchen with 3 teacups I'd already set out, feeling foolish and frightened in equal measure. Richard appeared moments later. "I'm going to shower before Tommy arrives," he announced, not meeting my eyes. "Golf was brutal today." "You weren't golfing," I said quietly. He froze halfway to the stairs. What, your shoes are clean, your polo shirt doesn't have a single grass stain, and you never, in 43 years, have come home from golf without telling me your score. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Richard turned. His face was harder than I'd ever seen it. Don't start, Margaret, not today. Start what? Asking questions when my husband brings home another woman and lies about where he's been. Sophia is Marcus's fiancée. That doesn't answer my question. I don't have to answer to you about every moment of my day, he snapped, and I physically recoiled. Richard had never spoken to me like that, not once in our entire marriage. He saw my reaction, and his expression softened slightly. I'm sorry, I'm stressed about work. Let's not fight. The kids will be here soon. He disappeared upstairs, leaving me alone with questions that multiplied like viruses in my mind. I should have confronted him further. I should have called Marcus right then. I should have done 1,000 things differently. But I was 65 years old, and I'd spent my entire adult life believing in the sanctity of my family. The idea that something could be rotting at its core was unthinkable, so I did what I'd always done. I returned to the casserole, set the table for 6, and prepared to be the perfect mother, the perfect hostess, the perfect wife. I had no idea that in exactly 3 hours, my daughter would tell me something that would force me to question every single truth I'd built my life upon. Tommy and Vivian arrived at noon sharp, as they always did. Tommy was the physical copy of his father, tall, broad-shouldered, with that same commanding presence that made people listen when he spoke. But where Richard had grown harder over the years, Tommy still had warmth in his eyes, especially when he looked at me. Vivian was another story. She walked into my home like she was touring a museum, observing, cataloging, but never truly engaging. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her designer outfit probably cost more than my car payment. She'd been with Tommy for 8 years, married for 5, and I still didn't know her favorite color, or whether she wanted children. Margaret, she said, offering me her cheek for a perfunctory kiss, something smells wonderful. Just casserole, I replied. Your favorite, is it? She looked genuinely confused, and my heart sank a little. I'd made her favorite dish every time she visited for 5 years. She'd never noticed Caroline arrived 15 minutes later, in a whirlwind of energy and expensive perfume. My daughter was magnificent, fierce, brilliant, successful, but there was a brittleness to her lately that worried me. She hugged me tight enough to hurt. Mom, she whispered in my ear, we need to talk. After lunch, alone. Before I could respond, she pulled back with a bright smile and greeted her father, who'd finally emerged from his prolonged shower wearing fresh clothes and an expression I couldn't quite read. We gathered around the dining table, the same table where we'd celebrated birthdays, mourned losses, announced engagements, the table that was supposed to be sacred ground. Where's Marcus? Tommy asked, helping himself to salad. Boster, Richard replied quickly, too quickly. Work trip. Sophia's back though, I said, watching Richard's face carefully. She stopped by this morning. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Caroline's fork clattered against her plate. Sophia was here. Your father picked her up from the station, did he? Caroline's voice was ice. She turned to Richard with an expression that made me wonder what she knew that I didn't. That was generous of you, Dad. She's going to be family, Richard said defensively. I was being welcoming. Is that what we're calling it? Caroline's laugh was bitter, and I saw Tommy and Vivian exchange a glance that confirmed my worst fears. They knew something. They all knew something. What's going on? I demanded, setting down my own fork. And don't tell me nothing. I've been teaching teenagers for 30 years. I know when people are hiding something. Silence. Caroline, I said firmly, what did you want to talk to me about? My daughter looked at her father, then at Tommy, then back at me. Maybe this isn't the time now, I insisted. Whatever it is, I want to know now. Caroline took a deep breath. Dad's firm is being investigated. Of all the things I expected to hear, it wasn't that. Richard's real estate empire had been his pride and joy for 40 years. He'd built it from nothing, weathered multiple recessions, and had always been scrupulously honest. Or, so I believed. Investigated for what? I asked. Fraud, Caroline said quietly. Embezzlement. There are accusations that he's been moving company funds into offshore accounts. The FBI is involved. I turned to Richard, expecting immediate denial, righteous fury. Instead, I saw something that terrified me more than any accusation: resignation. Richard, my voice cracked. It's complicated, he said. Then uncomplicated. I made some investments, used company funds as collateral. It's all perfectly legal. If it's perfectly legal, why is the FBI investigating? Caroline interrupted. Because someone filed a false report, Richard snapped. A competitor trying to destroy me. Dad, I've seen the preliminary evidence. It's not false. Caroline's voice was gentle now, almost pitying. They have paper trails, transfers going back 5 years, millions of dollars. The room spun. Millions of dollars. 5 years, while I'd been teaching high school students about the American dream, my husband had been a house, I whispered. Could we lose the house? Richard wouldn't meet my eyes. Oh my God, I breathed. We could lose everything. Not if he cooperates with the investigation, Caroline said. If he returns the money, testifies about who else was involved, he might avoid prison. Prison, my husband. Those words didn't belong in the same sentence. There's more, Tommy said quietly. He'd been silent throughout this entire exchange, and now he looked physically ill. Mom, there's something else you need to know. I don't think I can handle more, I admitted, but I was wrong. I could handle much, much more than I imagined. The human capacity for absorbing pain is limitless. Tommy glanced at Vivian, who gave him an almost imperceptible nod. Sophia isn't who she says she is. I blinked, trying to process this non sequitur. What does that have to do with? She's connected to the investigation, Tommy continued. Marcus didn't meet her by accident. She was sent to get close to our family. The casserole I'd so carefully prepared turned to ash in my mouth. What are you saying? Sophia works for the FBI, Vivian said flatly. She's an agent. Her engagement to Marcus is part of an undercover operation to gather evidence against Dad. The world tilted. I looked at Richard, who'd gone pale as death. You knew, I said. It wasn't a question. Margaret, you knew she was an FBI agent, and you picked her up from the station this morning anyway. You brought her into our home, into my kitchen. My voice was rising, hysteria creeping in at the edges. What were you doing with her, Richard? What were you really doing? Trying to fix this, he shouted, standing so abruptly his chair fell backward. Trying to protect this family, by sleeping with our son's fiancée. The accusation hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. Mom, Tommy said carefully, we don't know that, don't we? I turned to him, and he couldn't hold my gaze. You all came here today because you knew I was going to find out something. You were trying to manage me, control the narrative, but none of you had the courage to tell me the truth. The truth is complicated, Richard said. The truth, I replied, my voice deadly calm now, is that my husband is a criminal who's been lying to me for years, and apparently, he's also been having an affair with a woman young enough to be his granddaughter, who's actually an FBI agent investigating him. Am I missing anything? I'm not having an affair, Richard said, but his voice lacked conviction. Then, what was this morning? She was threatening me, saying if I didn't cooperate, didn't convince Marcus to let her deeper into the family, she'd make sure I got the maximum sentence. I was trying to negotiate. In what universe does negotiation require you to come home with your collar askew and her hand on your arm? You're being paranoid. Get out. The scream ripped from my throat before I could stop it. Get out of my house. All of you, get out. Mom, Caroline reached for me, but I jerked away. You knew, I said to her. You knew about the investigation, about Sophia, and you said nothing. You let me make her favorite foods, welcome her into my home, plan her wedding shower. You let me be a fool. I was trying to protect you, Caroline whispered, by lying to me. That's not protection, that's betrayal. I turned to Tommy. And you're letting a woman you know is a liar, a federal agent, toy with your brother's heart. What kind of person does that make you? I told Marcus, Tommy said defensively. 2 weeks ago. He didn't believe me. Then why didn't you tell me? No answer. I looked around the table at my family, the people I'd sacrificed everything for. The people I'd loved more than my own life, and I didn't recognize any of them. Please leave, I said quietly. I can't look at any of you right now. They left, one by one. They left me sitting at my dining table surrounded by a meal no one had eaten, in a house that apparently wasn't even mine anymore. Richard was the last to go. He paused at the doorway, and for a moment, I thought he might say something that would make this bearable. This isn't over, he said instead. We need to talk about what happens next. What happens next, I replied, is you find somewhere else to sleep tonight, and every night after that. He left without another word. I sat alone in my dining room as the afternoon light faded, surrounded by the ruins of everything I'd believed in, and I realized something that should have terrified me but instead filled me with a strange, cold clarity. I had been invisible in my own life for 43 years. I had been the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the woman who held everything together while everyone else pursued their dreams, their careers, their secret lives, and not one of them had bothered to wonder if I had dreams of my own. That was about to change. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my bedroom, the bedroom I'd shared with Richard for 4 decades, and I made a list. Teachers are good at lists. We're good at organizing chaos, finding patterns, solving puzzles, and my life had become a puzzle with pieces that didn't fit, gaps that needed filling, questions that demanded answers. Question 1. How much money had Richard actually stolen, and where was it now? Question 2. What exactly was Sophia's endgame? Was Marcus really in danger? Or was my son complicit somehow? Question 3. What else didn't I know? That last question terrified me most. At 6 a.m., I called my sister Patricia, who lived in Vermont with her husband and ran a small law firm. Maggie. Her voice was thick with sleep. What's wrong? I told her everything. The investigation. Sophia Richards' betrayal. With every word, I felt more like a character in someone else's story, not the protagonist of my own life. Jesus, Patricia breathed when I finished. What do you need? A lawyer. A good one. Someone who can tell me what my rights are if Richard goes to prison. I'll make calls today. But Maggie, you need to protect yourself. Get copies of everything: bank statements, property deeds, retirement accounts. If the FBI seizes assets, you could be left with nothing. Nothing. The word echoed in my mind as I hung up. I'd spent 65 years building something, and it could all disappear like smoke. Not if I had anything to say about it. I spent the morning methodically going through Richard's home office. He'd moved out to a hotel the night before. I'd received a curt text message informing me of this, which meant I had the house to myself and unrestricted access to his files. What I found made me physically ill. Bank statements showing transfers of hundreds of thousands of dollars to accounts I'd never heard of, emails discussing offshore opportunities and creative accounting. And most damning of all, a series of text messages between Richard and someone saved in his phone only as S. The messages went back months. They were careful, coded, but unmistakable in their intimacy. S. Miss you. When can we meet? Richard. Difficult. M. Is always home. S. We need to talk about the next phase. Can't do this over phone. Richard. Tomorrow. Usual place. 2 p.m. M. Margaret. Me. I was the obstacle in their relationship, reduced to a single initial. I took photos of everything with my phone, then returned the files to exactly where I'd found them. Richard couldn't know I was investigating him. Not yet. At noon, Marcus called. Mom, I heard about yesterday. Are you okay? I closed my eyes, grateful that at least one of my children cared enough to check on me. I'm managing. Are you still in Boston? Yeah. Listen, about Sophia. Do you know she's an FBI agent? Silence. Then, who told you that? Tommy, 2 weeks ago, apparently, but he says he told you, and you didn't believe him. Because it's insane, Marcus said, but his voice wavered. Sophia is a marketing consultant. I've been to her office, met her colleagues. Have you Googled her? What? Her full name, her supposed employer, her background. Have you actually verified any of it? More silence. Marcus, I know this is hard to hear, but I need you to really think. When did you meet Sophia? Where? Was it random? Or did she seek you out? We met at a tech conference in San Francisco, he said slowly. She approached me, actually, said she'd heard about my company, wanted to discuss potential collaboration. And then what? We talked for hours, went to dinner. She was brilliant, beautiful, everything I'd ever heal. Stopped abruptly. Oh God, you think she targeted me? I think you need to come home, today, and bring Sophia with you. I can't just. Marcus, your father is being investigated by the FBI. If Sophia really is an agent, and you're engaged to her, that makes you either a target or an accomplice. Either way, we need to figure out what's true and what's a lie. Mom, you're scaring me. Good, I said bluntly. You should be scared. I am. He promised to come home that night, and I hung up feeling like I'd at least accomplished one thing. Then my phone rang again. Unknown number. Mrs. Holloway. A woman's voice, professional and cold. Yes, this is Agent Jennifer Reeves with the FBI. I need to speak with you about your husband's case. Can you come to our field office this afternoon? My heart hammered. Am I being accused of something? No, ma'am, but we believe you may have information that could help our investigation. And frankly, Mrs. Holloway, it's in your best interest to cooperate. Otherwise, prosecutors might assume you were complicit in your husband's crimes. Complicit, another word that didn't belong in my story. I'll be there at 3, I said. The FBI field office was in downtown Hartford, a gleaming building that looked more like a corporate headquarters than a law enforcement facility. I'd dressed carefully conservative gray suit, minimal jewelry, my reading glasses even though I didn't need them. I wanted to look like a respectable, trustworthy grandmother, someone who couldn't possibly be involved in financial crimes. Agent Reeves was younger than I expected, maybe 40. With dark hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that missed nothing. She led me to a small conference room and offered me coffee, which I declined. I wanted my hands free and my mind clear. Mrs. Holloway, thank you for coming. I know this must be difficult. What do you want from me? She appreciated my directness. Information about your husband's business dealings, his associates, his travel patterns over the past 5 years. I'm a retired teacher. I don't know anything about his business. That's what most spouses say, and usually, they're wrong. Agent Reeves opened a folder and slid several photographs across the table. Do you recognize any of these people? I studied the photos, men in expensive suits at what looked like business conferences, and then my breath caught. One photo showed Richard at a restaurant table with 2 men I'd never seen before, and standing beside them, her hand on Richard's shoulder, was Sophia. When was this taken? I demanded. 8 months ago, long before your son met her. Agent Reeves watched my reaction carefully. Sophia Chando, that's not her real name, has been investigating your husband for nearly 2 years. The engagement to your son was a way to get closer to the family, gain access to documents and information she couldn't obtain through traditional surveillance. So she's using Marcus. She's doing her job, Agent Reeves corrected. Your husband has stolen over $15 million from his company and its investors. That money has disappeared into accounts across 3 countries. We believe he's planning to flee the United States, probably to a country without an extradition treaty. 15 million? The number was incomprehensible. Why are you telling me this? Because we believe you know where some of that money is. Maybe not consciously, but wives usually know more than they realize. Agent Reeves leaned forward. Mrs. Holloway, your husband has been liquidating assets for months. He's cashing out retirement accounts, selling properties through shell corporations. All of it is happening in your name too, which means if he runs, you could be charged as an accessory. I haven't signed anything. Are you sure? She slid another document across the table, a power of attorney, dated 6 months ago, bearing my signature, except I'd never seen that document before in my life. I didn't sign this. The notary says you did. She has records of meeting with you at a coffee shop in West Hartford. I stared at my alleged signature. It was good, very good, but I could see the subtle differences from my real handwriting, the way the M curved, the pressure on the T. It's forged, I said. Richard forged my signature. Can you prove that? I tried to remember where I'd been 6 months ago, what I'd been doing. I kept a detailed planner. Always had. Yes, I said. 6 months ago, I was in Florida visiting my sister. I have plane tickets, hotel receipts, dozens of witnesses. I was never at that coffee shop. Agent Reeves made a note. That's helpful. But Mrs. Holloway, forgery is a serious crime. If you're willing to testify that your husband committed identity fraud, I'll testify to the truth. Good, because here's what I need from you. She pulled out a recording device. I need you to wear a wire. Talk to your husband. Get him to discuss the offshore accounts, where the money is, what his exit strategy is. You want me to spy on my husband. I want you to protect yourself and your children from going down with him. Agent Reeves's voice softened slightly. Mrs. Holloway, Richard is going to prison. The only question is whether he takes you with him. Right now, prosecutors could make a case that you knew about the fraud, that you benefited from it. That house you live in, that was purchased with stolen money. Your car, your jewelry, your retirement fund, all potentially bought with funds embezzled from investors who lost their life savings. I felt sick. But if you cooperate, she continued, if you help us recover the money and build our case, I can get you immunity. You keep your assets. You stay out of prison. And maybe you salvage something of your life. And Sophia, what happens to her? That's classified. She's destroyed my son, made him fall in love with her, made him plan a future with her, all while lying about who she is. He's going to be devastated when he finds out the truth. Better devastated than complicit. Agent Reeves said. Mrs. Holloway, your son is already under investigation. We've been monitoring his communications with Sophia, and some of them suggest he may know more than he's letting on. That's impossible, Marcus. Wouldn't people do surprising things for love, or for money? She stood. I need your decision by tomorrow. If you agree to cooperate, I'll have the DA draft immunity papers. If not, she shrugged. I hope you have a good lawyer. She left me alone in the conference room with the photos, the forged document, and the recording device. I sat there for a long time, thinking about love and betrayal, about 43 years of marriage that might have been built on lies from the start. Then I picked up the recording device and put it in my purse. If Richard wanted to destroy me, he'd badly underestimated his opponent. I'd taught English literature for 30 years. I knew how these stories ended. The villain always falls. The question was, who was the villain in this story? That evening, Marcus arrived home at 8 p.m., just as darkness settled over our quiet Connecticut suburb. He came alone. Sophia, he said, was still wrapping up work in Boston and would drive down in the morning. Mom, he said, pulling me into a hug in the foyer. God, I've been so worried about you. I held him tight, this baby of mine who was now 35 and stood 6 inches taller than me, and I wondered if I was about to destroy him. We need to talk, I said, leading him to the kitchen. This room had always been our sanctuary, the place where scraped knees and broken hearts got tended with cookies and conversation. Now, it would be where I broke his heart myself. I made tea while Marcus sat at the counter, exactly where he'd sat 1,000 times before as a child, teen, adult. Some things never changed. Tell me about Sophia, I said. From the beginning, everything. He sighed. Mom, I know Tommy's been saying crazy things. Humor me. So he told me the story. The tech conference in San Francisco 18 months ago, Sophia approaching him at a networking event, her brilliant insights into his industry, their instant connection, the whirlwind romance that followed expensive dinners, weekend trips to wine country, her gradual integration into every aspect of his life. She was everything I'd ever wanted, Marcus said. Smart, ambitious, beautiful. She understood the stress of building a startup. She never complained when I worked late or traveled. She was perfect. No one's perfect, I said gently. I know that, but she was perfect for me. He ran his hands through his hair. Mom, I love her. I know it's only been 18 months, but I love her in a way I've never loved anyone. The idea that she's been lying to me this whole time. What if she has? Then my judgment is completely broken, he said bitterly. Then everything I thought I knew about people, about relationships, is wrong. I understood that feeling intimately. There's something I need to show you, I said, pulling out my phone. I'd debated this all afternoon, but Marcus deserved to know the truth. I showed him the photos Agent Reeves had given me Sophia with Richard. 8 months before she'd supposedly met Marcus. My son went white. This doesn't mean anything. Maybe they met at an event. Marcus, look at her hand. Look at how she's touching him. It was intimate, familiar, the way you touch someone you know well. Why would she lie? His voice cracked. If she was investigating Dad, why not just tell me? I would have helped. I would have done anything to protect the family. Would you? I asked carefully. What if helping meant betraying your father? What if she'd asked you to spy on him, gather evidence, help build a case that would send him to prison? Marcus was silent for a long moment. I don't know, he finally admitted. I honestly don't know what I would have done. The honesty gutted me. This was my baby, my youngest, and I'd failed to teach him that family should always come first. Or maybe I'd taught him that too. Well, and now he was paralyzed between loyalty to his father and love for a woman who might not even exist. She's coming tomorrow, I said. We're going to have dinner. All of you, me, Sophia, Tommy, Carolyn, and we're going to get answers. What about Dad? Your father isn't welcome in this house right now. Marcus nodded, respecting that boundary even though it clearly pained him. After he went to bed in his old room upstairs, I sat alone in the kitchen and called Agent Reeves. I'll wear the wire, I said, but I have conditions. I'm listening. You leave Marcus out of this. Whatever he knows or doesn't know, he's a victim here, not a criminal. You give him immunity too. I'll have to run it by my superiors, then run it by them. But those are my terms. You protect my son, or I don't cooperate. There was a pause. Then, fine. But Mrs. Holloway, you need to understand something. Once you put on that wire, anything your husband says can and will be used against him in court. This isn't a game. This is you actively helping us prosecute your spouse. I understand. Because a lot of people think they can handle this kind of thing, and then they freeze up. They can't go through with it. They hear their husband's voice and remember 40 years of marriage and Agent Reeves. I interrupted. My husband forged my signature to steal $15 million. He lied to me for years. He humiliated me by having an affair with a woman investigating him, a woman young enough to be his granddaughter. Whatever love I had for Richard Holloway died the moment I saw that forged document. Now I'm just a woman trying to survive. Another pause. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Come to the field office. We'll wire you up and prep you on what to say. I hung up and sat in the darkness of my kitchen, wondering if this was what evolution felt like. The death of one version of yourself and the violent birth of another. Margaret Holloway, devoted wife and mother, was dead. Someone new was taking her place. Someone dangerous. The next morning, I woke early and dressed carefully, a soft blue sweater Richard had always liked, comfortable jeans, my wedding ring prominently displayed. I needed to look like I was still his wife, still reachable, still someone he could manipulate. That at the FBI field office, Agent Reeves introduced me to the technical team who would fit me with the wire. It was smaller than I expected, barely the size of a button, and would be sewn into the seam of my sweater. It's voice activated, the technician explained. Just talk normally, don't touch it or adjust it. And whatever you do, don't let your husband search you. He won't, I said with more confidence than I felt. Agent Reeves walked me through the script. Ask him about the offshore accounts, where the money is, who else is involved. Most importantly, get him to admit he forged your signature. And if he won't talk, then you need to push. Get emotional. Make him think you're considering reconciliation. Men always confess more when they think they're going to get what they want. The cynicism in her voice suggested she'd done this many times before. By 10 a.m., I was wired and ready. Agent Reeves handed me a burner phone. If anything goes wrong, if you feel unsafe, you call this number. We'll have agents nearby, but not close enough to spook him. Can you do this? I thought about my children, about everything I'd built, about the life I'd lost.